And now, it's time for An Audience with the Pope, featuring esteemed, distinguished, and renowned trial attorney, Anthony Pope.
Esteemed, distinguished, or renowned? Which do you choose to use, Anthony?
I'll take either one of them.
I am so excited this morning. I'm 12 hours at an airport. I'm in Kansas City. I'm in Chicago. I'm performing. I got shows this weekend. I don't know where I'm going. Anthony Pope, he's been my best friend for when Woodrow Wilson was president 150 years ago. Don Pepe's Route 21.
I just happened to call him last night too when he was at the airport.
Yeah.
So I heard it all last night. I heard it all.
You got a
this
preview
morning
of today's
on the
show.
way over.
I was getting on the plane when you called,
Yes.
and you're talking, and I was in Southwest, which means you're like a sardine with no respect, and get in the smallest seat you can, and they're very nice. But meantime, I'm talking on the phone, and Anthony says he's got some great things to talk about in a second. We appreciate you being here.
Sure.
Then
great to be here.
I look Mitchell Modell in the house. We got a lot going on here, and so it's very. And then Frankie. We're doing math. What was the math thing? I just forgot. We were going to do a math
Balance
thing.
of nature.
Balance in nature. Oh,
Right. I asked about it.
How many does he take a day?
Yeah, I said, how many do you take a day? And you couldn't figure it out. I think it's 2 times a day or 4 times a day.
So look, I go like
what's
that.
Three times a
I
day.
do this.
How is it?
If you're listening and you're watching, you'll get this. I looked at Gattulo. I looked at Al. I go, Al, how many is that? He froze like he was in math class.
I did.
The look
Usually
on
I
it.
cut
You
math
see,
class,
look at his
you know.
face.
But it's 3 and 3. 3 fruits, 3 vegetables. You get sick, you double up. 6 and 6.
Oh, my God. Did you see that look on his face?
Yes, I saw that. But good to be here, guys.
Anthony,
Thank you,
great
Al,
to have you.
Frank.
Anthony, so you know what? A lot of people are talking about, first of all, with marijuana, with alcohol, marijuana. And now people with the DUIs. I mean, how do you address that when someone comes to you for a DUI? Whether it's do you have to decipher if it's booze, if it's marijuana? I mean, how do you deal with that?
Well, we don't have to decipher it. And our law firm, the Anthony Pope Law Firm, I mean, basically you come in as an evaluation and an assessment, but the ticket that's issued will reflect exactly what it is, whether it's DWI or it's DUI, being under the influence of some intoxicant. The difference is with DWI, there's a breathalyzer machine. Let's start from the beginning. First of all, for someone to stop you when you're driving your motor vehicle, they have to have probable cause. So that's the first thing you look at as an attorney. Did they have probable cause to stop the car? If they didn't, then it doesn't matter what follows because everything would be suppressed if a court found there was no probable cause. Assuming there is probable cause, and now the police officer comes up to the driver, and the driver manifests some indication of intoxication. If the officer has reasonable suspicion, he could ask the person to come out of the car, and they could then do a field sobriety test. Now, you could agree to it or you could disagree with it. You don't have to consent to it. Most people will do it. If after the field sobriety test and the observations of the officer, they determine that you're under the influence, you're now placed under arrest. Then you have to go to headquarters. Then once you get to headquarters, you have to wait for 20 minutes before they'll take the breathalyzer machine. That's the conditions under which it has to be done. You have no right to refuse it, typically under the old law. And if you refused it, you get an additional 6 months from what you'll get on the DWI. And the breathalyzer machine can be attacked, of course. So DWI is a very special area of law. There's a lot to it. It's not just a traffic ticket. People have to be mindful that, especially under the old law, you would lose your license if convicted on the first offense. What's interesting now is that what took effect on December 1st is the law changed. So on a first-time offense, if your reading is between 0.08 and 0.10, you don't have to lose your license. What happens is, if it's a first-time offense, you'll then have an interlock device that you have to install in your car. As long as you install that interlock device, the moment it's installed, you could go back to driving.
What do you do? Got to breathe into something? Is that
yes,
what it is?
the car won't start. The interlock device goes on the
that's
steering
cool.
wheel, and you have to breathe into it. If you're intoxicated, you can't start the car. So what happened was the legislature in New Jersey, and this is for New Jersey, not New York, they decided that, it seemed to be unfair because you get a first-time offender, people have jobs, they have careers, they have and all of a sudden now you could lose everything for a first-time offense. And if it's .08, you're just over that. Up to one, you're not really. You broke the law technically, but does it warrant you losing your license?
You're looking at Al
and your life. No, not at all.
He drives to all these tap takeovers.
Al, that wasn't me, Al.
No, I know. No, it's him.
I was gonna say, can I have your card, Anthony? Can I have your card? Can I have your card? Where's that Anthony Pope law firm? Where's that? Yeah.
So now you don't have to lose
I've
your
never
license.
seen Al listen so intently. No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
You don't have to lose your license. But the viewers should be mindful. That's up to a certain point. So normally what it was you would be exposed to a 3 to 7 month license revocation if you were between that range. Now, if you're up to .15 or if you go beyond 1.5, then you're subjected to a loss of license still.
Yeah.
Because then your intoxication is almost double what it should be. But what's changed is instead of a 7 to 12 month range for loss of license, it's now a 4 to 6 month change.
Oh my God! You
with
figure all this out.
With the interlock device.
Yeah.
But the interlock device, the amount of time that you have to have it on is increased with the new law. So the whole idea, as I see it here, is for people to be given that one shot. Maybe you have an alcohol problem. Maybe it was just a mistake, an aberration, a holiday party, whatever. Let's allow people to work. Let's allow them to get back with their life. But let's have this interlock device plus some fines and things that are associated with it. So I see it as a pretty good thing, quite honestly. One thing it will do, though, is I think it'll increase the trials that take place. Because if you no longer stand the risk of losing your license, and you could cut off a couple months, sometimes people would take the plea. Now you're not going to lose your license even if you lose at trial, so why not take a shot?
Yeah.
The second-time offenders, though, it's still a loss of license. But instead of a mandatory 2 years, now it's between 1 and 2 years. So I think on the second degree or the second-time offenders, there'll be less trials. On the third-time offenders, it simply changed from a 10-year mandatory license suspension to a 8-year license suspension, but you also have mandatory jail time when you have the third offense.
Here's my question, though, man. Well, how does a police officer, and you were a cop at 19 years old, and I feel for the police, and we always support law enforcement on the show. How's a cop going to tell if you're smoking weed or if you're drinking? You can smell drinking. You have the breathalyzer test. Well, how do you tell? How does a police officer say? Is it his discretion?
Well, it's not a police officer really, unless they're trained in narcotics. They really can't opine as to a particular narcotic. What they can do, though, is if you are impaired, if you're swaying on the road, they pull you over. They do a field sobriety test, and you cannot conduct any of the field sobriety tests. And this generally is on video. Well, then you're under the influence of something, so they will charge you with a DUI. With alcohol, of course, as you said, that what happens is if they smell the alcohol, and even if they don't smell the alcohol, if the field sobriety tests are inadequate, they will take you to police headquarters under arrest, and then they'll do the BAC test, and that'll determine how much alcohol, if any, is in your system. But people have been charged without having any alcohol in their system based on the observations, and that's always challengeable in a court of law. That's why it's important for people in these instances, because the risks are so serious. You really need to seek legal advice. There's no question if you're stopped and charged, unfortunately, with DWI. And now is the time that these things happen, certainly, as we're coming into the holidays.
But why would I understand the first-time offender situation that you mentioned, but why would the legislature make it less of a penalty for a third-time offender to go from a 10-year mandatory suspension to an 8-year? I mean, once you're caught drinking and driving 3 times, you've got a real problem.
Yeah,
I don't want that guy driving.
Frank, I think there's a whole mindset in New Jersey as to lesser penalties, less people in jail. This particular governor doesn't believe that he believes we have too many people in jail. He believes the penalties are still. I don't really see that much of a difference between 10 and 8. I think if somebody is going to rehabilitate, They're going to go for Alcohol Anonymous, and they're going to go and try to get their life in order. I don't think that cut in 2 years is going to be a risk to the community. So I think it's just a mindset, and it's a general course that's taking place in New Jersey to lessen penalties, let people out of jail earlier, give people more opportunity.
But don't drink and drive, man.
No, listen, Joe, we're all on the road, so the last thing we want to do is have that.
I don't even take a sip anymore. Just I don't want to be impaired behind the wheel. But when you're younger, you don't think about it that much. I guess,
and also, Joe, your body weight and how much you ate could affect whether or not you're really impaired.
Yeah.
So that's why I think the first-time offenders, I think this is appropriate. And be mindful, though, this has nothing to do with if you're involved in an accident or somebody's hurt. You still face criminal penalties. If you're driving while intoxicated and somebody, God forbid, gets hurt or killed. So that doesn't change that law. It just simply, if there's no accident, there's no injuries, that's the type of situation this addresses.
Anthony Pope breaking it down. A lot of people come to you for this, I guess.
Sure. DWI is a big area. Yeah, there's no doubt.
And we've all had somebody who's had some kind of situation, and a problem. So, hey, but on a national level, what's going on with this impeachment situation? Anthony, now today they're going to hand down the articles of impeachment. And now you, as a lawyer, you're watching this. And I mean, what did my dad always tell me? I was like, reasonable doubt. If there's any reasonable doubt, you would throw the case. If this was a criminal case against President Trump, the way they're doing it now, with the information that they don't even have, it would be thrown out of court, right?
Well, no, it wouldn't be thrown out of court, Joe. It would go to a trier of fact to make the decision. The standard of beyond a reasonable doubt is for a judge and or a jury to determine once the charges have been brought. So the Congress writes up the articles of impeachment. If they have the votes to move them forward, it then goes to the Senate, and the Senate acts like a jury. And unless the Senate has 67 votes or more, then he would be acquitted, or the Senate could really just dismiss it when it reaches the Senate floor. Look, as from my assessment as an attorney, I don't see a crime here. I don't see the quid pro quo. The conversation was edgy. I think the president is not a typical politician, as we all know. Should he have put it in different words? If I was advising him, I certainly would have told him to do so. But you can't compare this to Nixon, for instance, who's on tape telling people to break into the Democratic headquarters to steal stuff, or Bill Clinton, who admitted that he lied under oath and committed a crime. It's not the same thing. I just don't see any smoking gun here, any crime. His language, his manner is always suspect sometimes, but it's not a crime. This is a political situation, and unfortunately, that's the world we're living in right now.
I know. And the Supreme Court, Anthony Pope, it's interesting. I think this is all what this is about. I really think they just, because they get nervous. The district judges that the president is putting in place as we speak, and then the Supreme Court now, and with Ruth Bader Ginsburg, we wish her all the best.
Yeah, I hope she lives forever. She's a great jurist, but I don't disagree with you. Donald Trump, from the very beginning, is threatened the system the way it existed, and the politicians don't want that. And that's the way. But before I leave, guys, thank you again. I want to give a shout out to Gus Percio, a dear friend from Nutley, New Jersey.
Gus,
say hello to Gus, Joe.
Gus, how
he
are
is
you?
a loyal follower of this show, and he's a great guy, a former United Parcel worker. And Gus, we love you, and thank you so much for always listening to the show.
How many Gus's do you hear?
I don't know many Gus.
Gus is a great name.
Yeah, it's a great
name.
Not
enough Gus's in this
And this
world.
guy's a great guy. So
Gus, a great guy. Gus, how are you? Anthony, we love you, man. Thanks a lot.
Love you too, buddy. Thank you, guys.
If somebody wants to get in touch with you, Anthony, if I may.
973-344-4406.
Yeah.
The Anthony Pope Law Firm. We have a great website. Just go on. We'll tell you the services that we offer. And everybody have a good holiday. I hope to see you next week.
Merry Christmas, man.
Talk to you soon.
Thank you, Anthony Pope. Anthony Pope right there. Mitchell Modell coming in studio live. Worth the price of admission alone. It's cold outside, baby. Joe Piscopo on the radio.